At 2 in the afternoon Eastern Time on Monday, June 8th, a magnitude 6.1 earthquake struck the southeastern Gulf of Mexico, 104 kilometers west-northwest of Mantua, Cuba. The footage is striking. Office towers in Miami swayed. A 28-story government building in downtown Miami was evacuated. The elevated commuter train at the Dadeland Metrorail Station was suspended. People in Tampa, Orlando, and as far north as Jacksonville felt the ground move. The earthquake did not strike Florida, but Florida felt the Gulf move. The magnitude was 6.1. The depth was 26 kilometers. The epicenter was 376 miles from Miami. The shaking was felt across Florida, from Cape Coral to Tampa, to Orlando, to Melbourne to Jacksonville. The shaking was felt across western Cuba and Mexico's Yucatan, in Cancun, Mérida, Playa del Carmen, and Tulum. Nearly 5,000 reports were submitted to the USGS within hours. It is no longer a question of whether Florida can feel a Gulf of Mexico earthquake. It just did. This is the same general region that produced an earthquake of approximately magnitude 6 in 1880. Near San Cristóbal, Cuba, that earthquake was also felt in Florida, 146 years apart. Same coast, same crossing of water, same surprise. But here is the detail that tells the real story. The United States Geological Survey has been monitoring seismicity across North America for over a century. They have seismometers from California to the Caribbean perimeter. They have a real-time link to the National Tsunami Warning Center. They have cataloged every significant Gulf earthquake since instrumental records began in 1950. And within hours of the rupture, a USGS geophysicist issued the verdict. The largest earthquake ever recorded in the Gulf of Mexico with modern instruments. The office workers in the Stephen P. Clark Government Center, who watched their monitors slide across the desks. The commuters at the Dadeland Metrorail Station, who felt the elevated platform shift. The residents of western Cuba, whose homes had not shaken like this in living memory. And the tourists on the beaches of Cancun and Playa del Carmen, who felt the sand vibrate under their towels. For 76 years of modern instrumental seismic monitoring, the Gulf of Mexico has been quiet on this scale. The pattern held. The question now is what a rare intraplate earthquake reveals about a region that prepares for hurricanes and does not expect the floor to move. This is how it happened. At 2 o'clock Eastern Time on Monday afternoon, the seafloor 26 kilometers beneath the southeastern Gulf of Mexico ruptured along a reverse fault. The energy spread outward as seismic waves through the crust of the North America plate. In western Cuba, the shaking arrived within seconds. The Pinar del Río province felt the strongest motion. In Havana, 200 kilometers east, buildings swayed and residents stepped into the streets. There were no immediate reports of major structural damage, but inspections began at once. Across the Florida Straits, the waves traveled north. South Florida felt the shaking less than a minute after the rupture. In downtown Miami, the 28-story Stephen P. Clark Government Center began to sway. Office workers watched their monitors slide across the desks. The decision was made to evacuate. The Dadeland Metrorail Station suspended service. The shaking continued north. Tampa, Orlando, Melbourne, Jacksonville. Across the Florida Straits in the other direction, tourists in Cancun, Mérida, and Playa del Carmen felt the floors move beneath them. Within minutes, the USGS posted the preliminary magnitude and confirmed the epicenter. The National Weather Service office in Miami posted that no tsunami threat was expected. Within the hour, the National Tsunami Warning Center officially confirmed no tsunami danger for the United States East Coast, the Gulf states, or the eastern coast of Canada. In Florida, the danger was not collapse. The shock was recognition. The ground was moving. The strange part was not only the magnitude, it was the location. What just happened underneath the Gulf was geologically unusual. A reverse fault, a shallow rupture, a plate interior. Reverse faulting is what happens when two blocks of rock are pushed against each other and one rides up over the other. The motion releases energy as seismic waves. A magnitude 6.1 earthquake at 26 kilometers depth releases enough energy to travel hundreds of kilometers through the crust. That is why the Stephen P. Clark Government Center, 376 miles from Mantua, swayed enough to trigger an evacuation. Tall buildings amplify low-frequency motion. The earthquake was offshore, but offshore does not automatically mean tsunami. A tsunami requires significant vertical seafloor displacement. Reverse faulting at 26 kilometers depth produces strong shaking, but the seafloor itself barely moves vertically. The water column above it has nothing to lift. Intraplate, the official term for what happened underneath the Gulf at 2 o'clock Eastern Time. Earthquake inside a tectonic plate, not along a plate boundary. Inside the North America plate, 400 kilometers north of the nearest active boundary. Intraplate earthquakes are rare. They occur on ancient fault systems that still hold residual stress from previous episodes of tectonic evolution. Unlike the Cotabato Trench rupture in Mindanao earlier the same day, this was not a plate boundary event. Unlike a subduction zone earthquake, this was not driven by one plate sliding under another. Unlike the volcanic earthquakes at Mayan, this was tectonic, but on an ancient fault buried under the seafloor of the Gulf. The strange part was not only the magnitude, it was the location. To understand what is actually happening under the surface, look at where this earthquake was, and where it was not. The Caribbean is tectonically active, but its major plate boundary earthquakes happen south and east of Cuba, along the Oriente Fault Zone, the Cayman Trough, and the Puerto Rico Trench. Western Cuba, the part facing the Gulf of Mexico, has historically been the quieter side of the island. This earthquake was on the quieter side, on a fault system that does not appear on most regional hazard maps because it has not done anything significant within living memory. Here is what is not making most headlines. In 1880, earthquake of approximately magnitude 6 occurred near San Cristóbal, Cuba. The instrumentation of the time was limited, but the felt reports were preserved. The earthquake was felt in Florida. 146 years ago, the same general region produced the same kind of event, and the shaking reached across the strait in the same way. Rare does not mean impossible. Florida is not in the same psychological category as California, Alaska, Japan, or Chile. Building codes are designed primarily for hurricanes, storm surge, sinkholes, and flooding. Earthquake drills are not part of the standard preparation. Most Floridians who felt the shaking on Monday afternoon had never felt an earthquake before in their lives. Florida prepares for hurricanes, does not expect the floor to move. 146 years apart, same region, same general magnitude, same felt area reaching across the Florida Straits. For most people in Florida, this was more alarming than destructive, but it was still a reminder that rare does not mean impossible, and it is not over yet. The Pacific Tsunami Warning Center has confirmed no threat. The National Weather Service in Miami has not changed its assessment. USGS has not ruled out aftershocks in western Cuba. The felt reports are still being submitted. The fault geometry is still being analyzed. Miami is still answering calls for service. USGS experts expect aftershocks near western Cuba in the coming days. They are unlikely to be felt strongly in Florida. The main shock was the rare event. The aftershocks are the expected sequence. On the same day, the Philippines experienced a much larger and more dangerous earthquake, a magnitude 7.8 rupture along the Cotabato Trench, with real tsunami waves and casualties. These events are not connected. One was a plate boundary rupture in the Pacific. The other was an intraplate event in the Gulf of Mexico. The question is not whether Florida was hit. It was not. The question is not whether a tsunami is coming. It is not. The question is what the residents of Miami, Tampa, Orlando, Jacksonville, and the residents of Havana, Pinar del Rio, Cancun, and Mérida take away from a Gulf of Mexico earthquake that nobody saw coming. This was not a catastrophe. It was a reminder. The most unsettling earthquakes are not always the most destructive. Sometimes they are the ones that happen, where nobody thinks the ground is supposed to move. If this story is worth telling, subscribe. We cover more of these every week,